As a musician, have you ever been in a season where you feel like you're plateauing, like in the same place? You're going for gigs, you're doing gigs every day or every weekend, but you're still on the same place, like you're not growing. Maybe it's because you're not managing your practice time as it should be, right? Maybe you're not even practicing. Let's start there. Yeah. Practice is very, very important, because when you're practicing, that's where we are building muscle memory. That's where we are growing our bank of information and abilities and skills, so that when you go on stage or when you're performing, we are able to execute, because we have a decent vocabulary bank per se. So that's where you need to start, that you need to be able to practice and practice regularly. Consistent practice is extremely important. Now, maybe you're even practicing, but your practice is not as effective. I usually tell people that practice is meant to be frustrating. It's not meant to be fun, because you're learning things you do not know, right? So it gets frustrating. That's how it is meant to be. But you need to be careful how you practice, because especially if you're a musician who performs regularly, you might be having a set list you're working on as a singer or an instrumentalist. And if you're only practicing for the gig, you'll only be focused on the now. But you need to remember that you need to work on the long term as well. And this is how you go about it. First, analyze yourself. Find out what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses. You need to know your strengths because you want to play within your strengths, right? And also just maximize on them to bring us the best of you. But also, at the same time, you need to be working on your weaknesses so that you keep getting better. That's very, very key. And you have to be intentional and deliberate and focused when you're handling your practice time, so that you're able to achieve these two things. This is what I usually do. I break down my practice sessions into two sections, 50-50. If I'm, say, practicing for an hour, the first 30 minutes, I'll work on what I consider to be my weaknesses. For example, maybe I'm too slow in playing my scales, or I'm struggling in getting some runs here and there when I'm singing, or my tone is not as consistent as it should be. So the first 30 minutes, I'll focus on those things, right? Because they'll bear fruit in the long term. I mean, I might practice today to increase my speed in playing a particular scale, but I don't expect to get it proper and right in 2-3 days for the next gig. But if I keep on doing it consistently for a month or two, I'll start seeing fruits. Then the next 30 minutes, I'll now work on my set list for the next gig, right? The songs that I need to prepare for the next gig that I'm performing, I will now work on them. So remember, break your practice sessions into two. One, work on the long term. Yeah. Work on the long term. Those are your skills, those are your runs, those are your different techniques that you need to lock in the long term. Work on your weaknesses. Now, the other 30 minutes, if you're doing an hour, now prepare for your next gig. And that's how you get better and grow as a musician.